In this group of optimists, I am the alien. For me, the ineffable means the unspeakable, that which cannot be said, so I can understand why people would not want to speak or even think about it. The ineffable is momentous and profoundly disturbing, always. Nevertheless, it is the topic the organizers have set out to explore, so I am going to talk about the unspeakable in a brief time, because how much can one say? Let's start with the bad news. The ineffable cannot be designed. We are addressing a group of designers, presumably, and people interested in design, telling them that the ineffable, which is sometimes called the beauty beyond expression, is beyond the reach of their skills and talents, can only be upsetting. I will go so far as to say that designing is the enemy of the ineffable. As soon as we design, we start to control. We start to set up the defining boundaries and limits, and we squeeze out the ineffable, which is something that emerges when systems fail, when limits are transgressed, and when things fall apart. We humans like to set things up so that we feel we are in control. Our controlled environment is arranged to reassure us that everything is okay. That is what our politicians do. Tell us everything is okay. Don't worry about Iraq. It's going to be okay. Don't worry about pollution. We are going to take care of it. Architects are part of that game too. I am an architect, so I can speak to the architects. I think all of us are implicated. I am really uncomfortable when I hear the upbeat talk of architects all the time. Nothing but the upbeat talk. Our habits, the upbeat talk being one of them, our accustomed use of things, only serve to reassure us. We don't want to be discomforted. We don't want to have to move in a way that we are not used to moving. It's all about reassurance. But in fact, it's only when we are shaken out of our habits that we are able to change and grow. The effect of design is largely to reinforce our habits and enhance our sense of safety within them. This very room is an example. I was here once before, and I have to say, it is really typical as a habitual setup. The usual arrangement of chairs, stage, the lectern. But what if we set it up differently? Or if we stood in the streets? Or if we didn't have a room at all? How would that affect our behavior? And more importantly, our thinking? What if we didn't have to design control and to influence what we say and do? Could we still talk to each other, exchange ideas and feelings? Could we still be human? When the habitual molds are broken, we are forced to ask these kinds of questions. Normally, we give up our habits and change only when we are forced to. The changes can be caused by war, or flood, or personal calamity, and their severity determines how drastically we must adapt our thinking and actions. Designers normally polish up what we already know, but occasionally an architect can, by design, shake up our comfortable assumptions and actually build something that makes us say, hey, wait, that's not architecture. I remember when I saw a photograph of Le Corbusier's chapel at Longchamp in 1957, just after it was completed. I was 17 years old, and a friend of mine, already in the School of Architecture, came back on holiday and showed me a photo of it. Look at that, he said. That was the ugliest building I had ever seen. I couldn't believe people were calling it architecture. I was shaken. What makes it architecture and not just weirdness? I'm still not sure, but I am glad an architect can make a move like that, destabilizing me, making me uncomfortable, making me question what I think I know and believe. It is experience like this through which the ineffable begins to leak, and we can taste its bitterness. The architect didn't design the ineffable, but he did set up the circumstances that enabled me to experience at least a bit of it. Of course, once the building sits there for a while, we get used to it, and maybe even say, what great architecture! Thinking so, or just saying so, eventually becomes habitual. Occasionally, too, Artists upset us with works that challenge the accepted limits of art. A Jackson Pollock painting from 1949 was made by dripping paint on a canvas, hardly the sort of control artists were supposed to have over their work. He was introducing chance and accident into painting, as the Surrealists had done, but to a far greater extent. He took spontaneity and the irrational to a new limit. This isn't painting, this isn't art. Typical comments at the time were indicators of the shock of the new that had taken effect and brought with it a whiff of the ineffable. But only a whiff, and only for a short time, because this painting is by now securely within the normal, having become habitual to us long ago. The ineffable is always of short duration, because of the great human capacity for adaptation. A much stronger sense of the ineffable is seen in the photograph of a group of people obviously in distress. The photograph itself is not a self-conscious artwork, concerned with the limits of photography and the like, but a work of journalism, showing us a piece of a particular event. What it reports to us is not the event itself, but the faces of the people witnessing it. Their expressions and gestures touch us, even move us deeply, but only when we know more about the event. The people are shocked and dismayed. If they were reacting to a first glimpse of Longchamp or the Pollock painting, we would perhaps understand their faces, but think their reactions overblown, unless they were devoted, conservative aesthetes. That wouldn't move us very much. But clearly they are not. What they are looking at is the destruction of the city where they live. Sarajevo in Bosnia in 1992. They are looking at the places where they have lived that have just been destroyed by artillery and mortar fire. They are looking at their friends and neighbors lying dead in the street. Their sense of reality, their sense of the normality of their lives have been disrupted by violence. The violence has destroyed the familiar for them, what they relied on, how they identified themselves, who they were, what they did that day, what they did every day. Theirs are the faces of the ineffable. A wounded woman is being rescued in a street under attack. There is an urgent sense of panic, of terror. In such moments, the ineffable fully breaks out and is unspeakable. The photograph only makes us aware of its existence, being secondhand. You had to be there as Paul Lowe, a very courageous photographer whom I met there in '93, was, to know the ineffable's full dimensions. Is this the end? What is life worth if everything that matters is destroyed? Blind instinct takes over, and we are far from the realm of the habitual and any forms of comfort. War is an extreme of destructive violence, but so are the natural disasters. In New Orleans, the violence of Katrina's extreme wind and flood destroyed people's worlds as effectively as war. Normal rooms are absurdly rearranged, becoming parodies of the everyday. Compared with the wholesale destruction of buildings, the damage seems small, but the fabric of the everyday is more subtle and fragile than we think. The sofa is still there, but no one can sit on it or lie on it. The sanctity of the home has been violated, and it matters little that it was by accident and not by intention. Some terrible event has occurred, and the ineffable has leaked through into reality, leaving us with the dread that our existence is really very tenuous and not assured at all. Painful ironies abound. The new buildings tipped, over by an earthquake in Taiwan, fell because architects and engineers left the ground floors as open as possible for shopping malls, weakening them with disregard for the threat from powerful lateral earth forces active in a seismic zone. Who is to blame here? Nature? Or the architects and engineers? From the viewpoints of the inhabitants caught in this catastrophe, it hardly matters. The ineffable cannot be designed, but design can surely invite it in. The list goes on. The urban clearings of German and Japanese cities designed during World War II by British and American war planners unleashed hell on Earth, and also an entire world of ineffability. For the shock of the new was at once a sound of doom and a prelude to the construction of a post-war world. People affected simply had to adjust their everyday habits and adapt. Is it necessary to bomb cities flat in order to build them anew? Obviously not. But some form of destruction of the old is necessary, and that produces for many the trauma of change. Is then the ineffable also the inevitable? Before answering, I'll extend my list of sources of the ineffable by one more. The destruction of the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. Until then, America had prided itself on its major cities never having been violently attacked by a foreign enemy. We had never suffered the sorts of destruction experienced by Europeans and Asians in World War II, save for some homegrown exceptions like the Civil War, called by historians the first modern war, in part because cities became targets, and the bombing of the Federal Building in Oklahoma City. But now, major American cities were attacked, and our whole idea of reality was twisted. The destruction was limited, but the fact that it was caused by foreigners using American airlines as weapons qualified the attack as a national calamity. The sense of loss was overwhelming. Loss of so many lives, loss of physical symbols of American power, loss of the sense of invulnerability, loss of innocence, however misplaced it might have been, loss of America's privileged place in the world. A profound sense of loss is the main effect of our experience of the ineffable. Coming back to the faces photographed in Sarajevo, we might be able to see that they don't belong to some people somewhere else. They are our faces. These faces portray unspeakable loss, as do the photos of the collapsing towers and their ruins. But there is also something else. Loss is inevitable in the story of each person. Losing your wallet, losing your job, losing your home, your family, your city, your life. The degree of loss escalates from the inconvenient to the inconceivable, and with it the experience of the ineffable. Loss, however, is necessary in order for us to change, not only our habits, but our understandings and beliefs. As long as we cling comfortably to what we are and know, we cannot learn or create. If design is to be a creative act, we must take on the tough situations in our lives. It must offer more than comfort and entertainment. In short, it must confront the unspeakable and undesignable and become an instrument for expanding our limits as individuals and communities, at once embracing and transcending them. Americans love to talk about freedom. We want to be free. We want our children to be free. And we are willing to kill and die for it. When I hear this talk, I often wonder if people understand that loss is the price we pay for freedom. At one romantic extreme, the old songline, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, referring to vagabonds and the homeless, but also to searching and restless wanderers in mind and spirit, sums it up. We are most free to recreate ourselves and the world around us when we have lost these comforting things that define and limit us. At a more realistic level, we would do well to have only what we need to go forward, remembering that if we want to be free, we cannot avoid the inevitable. Thank you.